The US government has won its appeal at the High Court in London over the extradition of the Wikileaks founder Julian Assange. Two senior judges ruled that he should be extradited to stand trial in the US to face espionage charges for publishing classified military documents relating to the US wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Well, this isn't the final word, we should say. Mr Assange can still appeal in further processes here. Speaking after the judgment, Julian Assange's fiancee, Stella Morris, said the decision was a blow for press freedom in the UK.
Julian represents the fundamentals of what it means to live in a free society, of what it means to have press freedom. The UK imprisons journalists. They're imprisoning Julian on behalf of a foreign power which is taking an abusive, vindictive prosecution against a journalist, and this is what it's about.
Let's cross to our legal correspondent Dominic Casciani, who is at the Court of Appeal. Dominic, what is the next legal stage in this?
Well, Gita, if you see from the ribbons behind me, these yellow ribbons tied all around the Royal Courts of Justice, it's pretty clear what Julian Assange's supporters think of him. They think he's a warrior for truth and justice who's at the heart of an appalling conspiracy involving the UK and the US to put him on trial for telling the truth about US war crimes. But today the Lord Chief Justice in the High Court said that whatever his supporters think of him, there is a case for him to answer in the US, and critically the US has now given very key assurances that Mr Assange, no matter how mentally ill he may be, will be treated humanely. And it's these assurances that Washington gave in the last few months which are at the heart of this reversal of the case, which means he's very, very close now to extradition. In essence, Gita, what they said is Washington said that they wouldn't put him in the harshest forms of solitary confinement. They wouldn't put him in a so-called supermax prison, which is reserved to the worst terrorist offenders in the United States. And also, on top of that, they said even if he were convicted of 18 offences of computer hacking and leaking of state secrets, he could apply to serve any sentence he received in Australia, where he's from, rather than in the US. That was enough to convince the two of the most senior judges in the country that Washington had met these concerns that Julian Assange could be treated properly. Now, where does he go from here? It's very difficult to say, to be perfectly frank. His team are saying we're going to try to go to the Supreme Court. They did that once before, years ago, and the Supreme Court ruled against them. They could try again, but it's a very, very, very long shot. So, to be frank, time may actually now be running out for him.
Dominic Casciani, thanks very much indeed. Well, I'm joined now by Reporters Without Borders' Rebecca Vincent, who's been attending Mr Assange's court hearings and monitored this one remotely. Mr Assange is going to have to face justice eventually in the US, isn't he?
Well, I would frame it completely differently, because I don't think this is a question of justice. We were extremely concerned about the substance of the January decision, which did not find in favor of press freedom or journalism. The ruling against extradition was, of course, only on mental health grounds, which is why we've now ended up in this situation today. But for us, this case is absolutely about journalism. Julian Assange has been targeted for his contributions to journalism for publishing information in the public interest. And the case that he might face in the US is based purely on the fact that the US Espionage Act does not have a public interest defense, allowing them to bring this case against a publisher for the first time. So the implications that this could have for journalism around the world are really alarming. This will set a dangerous precedent for many years to come if there is not success in another step of an appeal here.
Well, obviously, prosecutors say that this isn't about journalism, this is about theft of data that actually made people vulnerable, people across the US in government positions, and was utterly wrong. And, you know, ultimately, if he believes in his case, why doesn't he just go and argue his case in the US?
He is facing possibly 175 years in prison in a high security facility where he would very likely, despite the US assurances, be held in isolation in conditions of solitary confinement, whether or not it's special administrative measures. This is somebody who is not well, who is well documented to have severe mental health issues. He is unlikely to survive these conditions. So let's put it that clearly. This is a matter of possible life or death for Julian Assange.
Well, that is not what has been decided today. In fact, they've said that the mental health issues, are not serious enough to back Assange's case here. And at the end of the day, the US is a democracy. There are protections within its whole judicial system and its criminal justice system.
Well, this is frankly a polling decision by the UK High Court, which is gambling with Julian Assange's life. But I don't want to focus just on the humanitarian concerns here, because this is, for us and for many other free expression organizations around the world, a politically motivated case. He has been targeted for publishing information in the public interest. That should not be a crime. The US law needs to be amended, and we quite frankly will continue to campaign for his release in the same way that we do in countries around the world that imprison journalists, publishers and sources. This case has to be seen for what it is.
Rebecca Vincent from Reporters Without Borders, many thanks.